Hi, I'm Dr. Crawford, the founder and CEO of Crawford Clinics. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in trauma with the restoring self-cohesion approach as a synthesis, a model to help mental health providers and executive coaches learn how to holistically see the grounding of where our clients' symptoms come from. So if you see everything as symptom reduction, then you're chasing symptoms. But if we move back and we understand the physiological, psychological, social, and spiritual dynamics that are interfacing constantly within the inner world of our client, now we can ground our interventions in something deeper and more robust so that we're getting holistic upgrade. Not just a one-off symptom reduction for trauma, but we see where their soul has compartmentalized, where their spirit is not thriving, and they're in misalignment. And then as a result, the body is creating symptoms out of that dysfunction and discordant dynamics that are happening inside. I'm a psychodynamic therapist, which means I really appreciate the nuances and complexity of how the Lord has made us. I believe that every person truly is made in the image of God, meaning I believe, right, wrong, or indifferent, I truly believe people are not broken. That we're not fixing something broken, that we're understanding where's a misalignment, where's a lie and a belief, a trauma that is still living internally with infrastructure within the parts of self, that the soul is still maintaining dysfunction because it hasn't truly been metabolized and worked through yet. Many people have repressed trauma, including me. I grew up in a good Christian home, a family that loved me. I went to private school, prep school. I was in athletics, and yet I was full of self-harm. I had depression and eating disorders. This whole arm was cut up. I had all these relationship issues, fear of inadequacy and abandonment, and insecurity and self-hatred. I had mental fog. I thought I was ADHD. I had all these symptoms. And what we're doing as a society is we're trying to chase after symptom reduction. But in understanding, there's one inner world, and those symptoms are actually intel. We need our symptoms to give us information. Just like the end of your hand has nerve endings. And those nerve endings let you know, oh my gosh, my hand is touching something hot. And the reflex arc tells the brain, move your hand so that your hand doesn't burn off. But if we don't have those nerve endings, if we numb and avoid and we chase other things to distract, then we're not aware that our hand is burning off. And that's how I see many of our clients and ourselves, that we may do all the work that we can at a conscious level. But if we don't have a more robust understanding of the inner world and how trauma is stored unconsciously, then we're avoiding, we're distracting, we're chasing symptoms instead of recognizing the internal misalignment. So think of your spine, that you have vertebrae that need to be in a certain order in order for the spinal cord to give communication from the head all the way to the peripheral nervous system in order to move your hands. In order for that to happen, there has to be right alignment. But if anyone has dealt with back pain, you know what a bulging disc, a severed spinal cord, or a pinched nerve in your back feels like. When there's a misalignment, when our soul, which is our human understanding, our mind, our will, our own willpower, and our emotions or our feelings are stepping in front and we're trying to live from that, then on accident, we're a soulish Christian. We're leading from the temporal, natural realm of what we're around as humans, instead of from our spirit, the true you, the vibrant you. One is not better than another. They need to interface and be compatible. We need our body, our soul, and our spirit, all good, but all in right alignment, just like your vertebrae. You need that vertebrae to show up, to stack on top of one another to protect that spinal cord. But we don't need them in misalignment. And that's when my human understanding, my emotions, my willpower, habits, family of origin dynamics are trying to take over control. And we do that in different ways to try to protect ourselves. And so our symptoms are intel. It's trying to tell us something, tell the story of what your inner world is going through. And for today's talk, as we use the restoring self-cohesion approach, we're going to talk about how many of our traumas happen in the context of relationship. And in the context of relationship, we can withdraw, we can isolate, we can become people-pleasing, we can perform for love, we can be driven by the need to keep everybody happy with us and anxious at the fear of disapproval, disappointment, abandonment, rejection. We can live with such an imposter syndrome that we don't even realize how exhausted and depleted we are. We're in relationship, but we're not in relationship. Feeling so unseen and unknown, that is depleting to our system. And so in our life, we have heartache, and many times it comes through our relationships. So today we're going to talk about how those relationships can wound, but also the curative and the beautiful impact of healing through relationship. So as an adjunct professor, a lot of the students that we train, and now I'm a practicum site trainer, intern trainer, and supervisor, that a lot of times they have been trained to think about symptom reduction. And while that's good, and that is the motivation of why our clients come, and we definitely want to help reduce their symptoms, if that's the only goal, we're missing out at the canvas, the larger panorama view of what God is wanting to do in their life. Because symptom reduction, you can do that with homework, with techniques, with these nice approaches. And what you're doing is teaching them how to cope with things that are misaligned, which I would argue is important. But I would also argue does not resolve the unconscious root. And so from a psychodynamic perspective, that we learn and acclimate into the world through relationship. And I love the work of internal family systems, IFS, which I don't know personally if they ascribe to it or not, but the foundational principles of family systems very much is built upon the work of psychodynamic theory and psychoanalysis, because we introject is a psychoanalytic term. It means our family of origin become models or templates of what we take in the world. And we can love people and take them in. We can also hate people or feel unseen or neglected and also take them in. And so then we learn how to relate with ourselves that way. I love the work of EMDR. I love IFS. I love these innovative approaches, even HeartSync, if you've heard of that, where we're starting to conceptualize at such a deeper and a more robust level that we have parts of self, that we're made in the image of a triune God, that Genesis 1:26 says, let us make man in our image. And we are supposed to have different parts of self. That doesn't mean multiple personality disorder or DID. It means there's different sides of me that are supposed to learn how to be nuanced in their role. For instance, I have a competitive part of me that ideally shows up when I play sports or on a game night. I have a, learner part of me that hopefully shows up when I'm trying to study and learn a new concept. I have a romantic side of me that hopefully shows up in the right context and not in the wrong context, right? But what if the anger that's intended to be healthy is showing up with your parenting? What if it's showing up when you're driving? What if the romantic side of you is showing up with the intern at work and not the romantic partner at home? What if you're being nurturing and sweet to somebody that's not appropriate and it's going to lead to an emotional affair if you're not careful? We have all these sides to our personality, and in health, the right side of your personality shows up for the right situation. And we also learn how to inhibit something that's not supposed to be expressed in that situation. The problem is where there's trauma and where in relationship we've been wounded, And there's pain, there's disappointment, disenfranchisement, where we feel othered, we feel like we don't belong, that our gifts, our talents, the unique aspects of who we are not welcome. And when that happens, those parts of self stay regressed, which just means hidden. And the regression is your inner world's ability to just kind of contain and hold things. But that part of our soul stays at the age of maturity of when that event happened. So there's the wounded me, probably a part of your spirit that took in a belief that I am not good. I am not safe. I'm not accepted just as I am. And so then my soul needs to step in and perform, needs to please, needs to be perfect so that people will love, accept, and belong with me. Can you resonate? Even in your own story, you may be a healer, but I love our journey of being broken, healing healers. I don't think I said that right, but like having our own journey of empathy and compassion, because we know what it's like to be a wounded healer, to do our own work and connect with our own fragility and humanity and messiness in our own journey. So in your own life, maybe you're tracking of times that you felt othered or different. It was like there was kind of this template created, this unspoken standard, and just kind of not feeling like you're a part of that, whether at a societal level, an economic level, a family of origin, or a peer group, whatever reason that something made you feel different. In that space, we then learn how to protect ourselves from ever being rejected and abandoned again by having another part of my soul then step in as the defender, as the protector, not because I like this part of me, but because I'm ashamed of this part of me. So then I create the false self. How many of us walk around feeling confident and great, and then you get around certain people and it's like, my mind goes blank. I feel like I've just gotten smaller, or I don't know anything, and I feel insecure, and there's more comparison. Don't feel ashamed of that. Recognize that that's probably a relational dynamic that came from somewhere. And just like assessing the back, assessing where the vertebrae get out of alignment, we don't want to just chase symptoms like your fingers. Like, why do you have low self-esteem? Why do you not like yourself? Why do you have self-harm and eating disorders? Why do you have addiction? What are your mental health struggles about? As if they're isolated out here instead of an internal living current reality of how I'm continuing to relate with myself inside. And so what we look at is like a deeper stronghold, if you will. Some people might be familiar with that language. Some people might have weird connotations of what that means. Just think of it as like an archaic room inside. And where my ego, or the center part of my personality, decides, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to go there. And even in my own life, I'd go, God, don't worry, I won't do that again. Kind of like this, like, angst. I don't want to think, I don't want to feel, I don't like that about myself. Make that go away. In that place, my soul carried the burden and the weight of trying to now fix that for myself. And what you can see is I'm ashamed of my brokenness. I'm ashamed of my problems. And so in relationship, I pull away and I isolate internally. This is all an internal experience. And I pull away. I go into self-sufficiency and I try to perform. I try to be on. I try to please. I try to get everybody to like me, like this tap dance or dancing bear, so that you don't see what I'm afraid if you look hard enough, maybe even in your own life. We're afraid unconsciously if people look deeply enough inside of us, they're going to see that we're not that great, that we are broken, that we don't have it all together, and we don't know all the answers. And as much as our head knows and teaches others that it's okay to not know, internally, we live with that pressure and anxiety of feeling like an imposter because there's a me that's judging me. Whether you were judged or you perceived being judged or you felt dismissed or othered in any way, odds are good you turned against yourself. And that self-rejection continues to live inside. And that's a stronghold. That's me turning against, like a house turning against itself. Think of it like an autoimmune condition in your health, I grew up with self-hatred and Hashimoto's, which is a part of the immune system response to my thyroid. And I had an autoimmune, my body was literally attacking itself, just like my soul was attacking itself. In your own life or with your clients, you might be curious when they're talking, not just to the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, the porn issues, addiction issues, the relationship issues, but you're curious about their relationship with their self. Our chasing symptoms is often chasing the false comforters of how their soul or our soul learned to self-medicate. When we have a part of us stored unconscious, that part of self is in pain. It is literally isolated and separated from relationship. And from that place, there are signals that send to the brain, something's not okay. There's a bad part of me. What if that escapes? What if I'm out of control? What if I do something to sabotage my relationships? What if there's something that's just about me that causes others to reject, abandon, and not want me? From that place, we can see it's disrupting the neurochemicals. It's affecting our internal homeostasis, which does impact neurochemistry. So while we're outside trying to just medicate people, I'm not pro or against medication, but I do think we need a more robust understanding of the soul, the spirit, and the body and how they're interfacing. So when we go inside and we spend time, what I call an internal board meeting, to assess the relational equity or lack of equity between the parts of self. That the protector part of me usually is mad at the weak, vulnerable, sad, or angry part of me, that unconsciously I've decided if you see that, you would reject me. You wouldn't want me. So I reject me. I don't want that part of me. And many times my clients that have the most amount of panic, the most anxiety disorders and phobias, because often they are externally mirroring exactly what they're doing on the inside. They're phobic of a part of self. There's panic that the bad, shameful, dirty, angry, explosive part of me is going to escape and it's going to go hurt everybody. One of my favorite clients, I actually do really love all of my clients, but one in particular that stands out, had this issue with different forms of addiction. So substance abuse, food, nicotine, all kinds of things, alcoholism throughout the years. And they would do so good. They would work on behavior modification. They'd go to AA. They would do all the homework and the assignments. They'd do the accountability. And then some other addiction would show up. And then some other. So we would get a measure of breakthrough, or she would get a measure of breakthrough, and then something else would come back. And so what we learned to do in my sessions with her, I'm coming at the tail end where now we're working on a specific behavior. And so I told her, my goal is actually not to stop that behavior. If that's the predominant focus, you probably need to go to someone else first, get that under control, and then come back to me. And so right now they were in a safe place. It was nicotine, that it wasn't like an urgent life and death. And so they said, okay, well, I want to keep working with you. They didn't understand the philosophy of not chasing symptoms first, but really honoring the soul and figuring out why the soul, not just the body, yes, the body, but not only the body, needed that oral need met. So we go back and we unpack and realize, oh, their relationships, the oral need to attach and belong, breastfeeding, nurturance, comfort, that first year of life was not met. That they had very preoccupied parents. They had a very negative and caustic dad. And so we looked at their life, and most of the behaviors they had were all oral fixations. That's a relationship wound. It's an unmet relational need that then we convert and we say, okay, then I'll get it met through porn, sex, alcohol, drugs, smoking, shopping. I'll get it met through something else. And this person, it was all oral related, which is that need to take in relationship, to drink in relationship, It's our first stage of life when Erik Erikson said, we're asking, can I trust others to meet my needs? Trust versus mistrust. During the stage that we're breastfeeding, that I'm being nurtured, not just getting substance in my mouth, but actually being cuddled and hugged and delighted in and adored. If that doesn't happen, which unfortunately for a lot of people, that's a relationship wound that has no bruise. They can't look back and say, oh, I had maltreatment, I had neglect, I had this big traumatic brain injury. All they know is they just perpetually feel not enough, not connected, not seen, and needing to kind of self-medicate with something external to try to regulate this internal imbalance. So psychodynamically, we would say, yes, that's an event that happened a long time ago, but we can also understand that's a literal reality right now. That it's not just an event we're pointing back to, it actually created infrastructure. Our beliefs as a creative being made in the image of a creator, our beliefs construct our inner world. And so when we go through something, we now form belief systems that then turn into the reality that we live every day. There's dedicated systems within you that help you drive a car, walk, talk, type on a computer. All of those things are automaticity. It's so hard woven into your neuroplasticity. Everything's kind of written in there because of repetition and rehearsal. There's scaffolding. There's an imprint there. Our relationship dynamics are the same, and they are being carried out by internal parts of us. And we have reenactments. Not just on the outside where you're like, why do I keep dating the same kind of guy that's like my mom or my dad? Why do I keep ending up in relationships with bosses like X? But it's also happening right now inside of you, a real relationship where there's a disconnect. And you don't know how to honor and love that part of you. So going back to this client, we would go inside the room and thank the protector part that hated the weakness, them. And so we went in and we saw the shame part of this person. And the picture was of a chain around their neck, and they'd been chained back because there was such a belief of judgment that when the mom and the dad were not able to meet the emotional needs of the child, that internally the belief system is there must be something about me that's so bad that when that's front facing, people will reject me. So this badness needs to go buried inside. There's no trash can. So that means I have to bury it inside my gel cell of my own judgment. And now I have a guard on the outside, making sure nobody ever sees that in me, that does not exist. But that willpower, that me gutting it out, means there's a part of your soul that's exhausted, depleted, alone, and literally rejected all the time. Literally outside of relationship all the time. And so you're naturally going to have a false comforter. You're going to have something that you're going to turn to, or your client is going to turn to try to feel better. And again, we can stop this behavior. But if we don't heal the soul, the internal strife in relationship internally, of where I'm still integrating and responding to myself the way that my parents did, or a sibling, or a pastor, or a teacher, or elder, or a coach, a mentor of some sort, some kind of modeling that I'm still doing on the inside to myself. That internal angst of a house divided against itself is still keeping that lodged in pain, thus driving us toward our mental health struggle, our addiction issue, our relationship patterns that we can't get over with willpower. And so our job is to think deeper, to honor the symptoms, not just symptom reduction, because in my experience, and you may have your own, the more I chase after and try to control and fix the symptoms, normally they actually get worse over time, because you're taking away a false comforter without giving them something else to soothe and heal and validate the original wound of why that addiction or mental health struggle was there. So when we could see that shame in the cord around her neck, or chain around her neck on the inside, that picture she saw, Now we could learn how to love and accept the flawedness in her, and for her to realize the parent she has judged as a narcissist, a bad abuser, who was very abusive, they had said, I will never be like that person. So naturally, what we judge, we have to disavow in ourselves. I can't let that be inside of me, then I'm the bad guy. And so their soul had decided, this part of me that is like my dad, the abuser, you're bad. You're not allowed to be a part of me. Otherwise, you'll escape and you'll hurt somebody else. And so while they had worked years on behavior modification, just by stepping in that place with relational equity, saying, I love the me that is like my dad. Now, that's not easy to say when you have been deeply, profoundly wounded, or someone you love has been wounded by that person. But it is saying, in my humanity and in theirs, we all have junk. But we all have something that's redemptive and worth beauty, even if it's not being expressed. That there is something inherently good that God has made in each person. And while they may be in their own trauma state, they may have had their own modeling, and they may be in a place of pride and shame and fear and control and abuse now, there is something good about that person, even though they're hurting me. If we can take a human approach, and that's what we did with her, is I repented on behalf of her dad for the abuse, for the ways that I made her feel on behalf of her dad, that I made her feel so unworthy of love, so fundamentally broken and flawed, that she felt unlovable, unacceptable. And for many of our clients, they've never unpacked the relational wounds that led up to a lot of the mental health struggles and traumas they're going through. And if they have, then normally it's, okay, well, that bad thing happened. It's a long time ago, so forgive and move on. But that forecloses on the healing process. And it's essentially teaching people to just put a scab based on willpower to just forgive. Yes, we want to forgive. That is absolutely the trajectory of where we want to go. But more importantly, we need to open that wound. We need to get the gangrene out, the core beliefs and lies that have wounded the soul, the internal judgments against the self. That where I've seen that flawed, broken, shameful, bad part of me. In my own life, I had someone that I very much loved and trusted and looked up to, and they started to groom me into sexual behaviors. And the interesting thing about grooming is that the child is being introduced something with attention. And so you're pairing attention with a physical act. The child doesn't understand sexuality, but they understand attention. They understand pleasure. They understand that you're seeing me and you want to spend time with me. And so as a chubby kid who didn't get a lot of attention, we lived out in the country, I didn't have a lot of playmates, this person gently grooming me into sexual acts, I thought it's what I wanted. Because there was no violent rape, there wasn't anybody who snuck upon me and then bad things. It was something I felt like I was complicit to. But in reality, no child is sexually awakened emotionally, right? Like we're not able to steward something so psychologically nuanced and advanced as sexual development that needs to come far after cognitive development. But I didn't know that. So I took in the message of shame. And so I had this me that I had put in the jail cell. What have you put in your jail cell? What have you said, conscious or unconscious? I hate that about myself. Oh, I am so embarrassed. I wish I wouldn't do that. And some of ours may be unconscious, that we don't even realize it's down there. And so for me, it was a repressed memory. For many people that we work with in trauma, there's a lot of repressed memories. It just means it's not conscious because it hasn't been safe up to this point to bring it conscious. But if you, as a trauma-informed therapist, understand how relationship wounds happen, you can help put language, validation, and honor. Never am I saying to help prod them toward a memory. I never do that. I don't suggest, hey, were you molested? Did somebody ever touch you? Did you have a relationship wound? You never introduce that thought, just like we don't want to introduce sexual thoughts to children. But instead, you want to be passive and receptive and safe, that they can bring things up and now have language to go, oh, I thought that's what I wanted, but I don't think it was. I think I was wanting the attention. I think I was wanting the safety or the protection or the thing that they were giving me at the, kind of cost of giving this activity, this need, or sometimes you can be bullied, right? And so then now you can trauma bond with a bullier because now you feel safe and protected. Sometimes there's parentification of the child and these relationship wounds that you become kind of the parent that's taking care of the parents, even though you're the kid. Or maybe your spousification of the child, where you become kind of like the spouse emotional needs for a parent. And then the other parent is then kind of exiled out. And there's this weird triangling that might be happening. There's different parenting dynamics between siblings that kids may fall into, whether it's self-invited or family-invited through roles. There's a million different things that when we go slow and we create space and curiosity, now we can help put language to things that our clients thought was normal. And until you pop open the hood of the car, metaphorical, and you start helping people explore the relational dynamics they've gone through, they won't have language. And if you don't have language for something, you don't know to grieve it. The same with me. That I didn't have language for being molested because I was groomed into the behavior. So I was complicit. I wasn't being hogtied. Nobody was being mean. But it also psychologically was incongruent with what a little kid would want to do. I want the attention. I want the ice cream. I want the good things that I'm getting, but now are being kind of parlayed and tied into something that I'll give that to you because you're giving me attention. But my soul was not ready to steward that. And that's my concern for this generation, is they're trying to introduce actually illegal content. There's something called Jenna's Law. Please look into it, that it's actually law that teachers and those who are in youth service organizations are supposed to be educated, especially in the state of Texas, but many states, and they're trying to get it passed as a federal law, that it's illegal to groom children into sexual acts, which includes sex education that's premature to where their age of development. That we're not supposed to do these story hours on anal sex or activities of sexual nature. That's grooming. That's introducing sexual ideas before a child knows how to steward that. And that relational wound then again becomes an area of shame and denial, where I sequester all this badness, quote unquote, on the inside. And then I form then this is who I become. And a lot of clients, I remember one in particular, she had been gang raped. And so she then decided to become a prostitute, and she would sleep with a loaded gun under her bed, under her pillow, because she wanted the reassurance that if anybody ever tried, she's in control this time and she could kill them.
Thank you for staying with us. Don't miss the next episode.
Thank you for investing in yourself, your family, and your team. We are honored to serve you and your vision.